Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about Ihram, the garments worn during Hajj and Umrah. And, at first glance you might be thinking, okay, clothing, sounds kind of basic.
Yeah.
But trust me, we've got Wikipedia, Islam Q&A, and Muslim Aid to guide us. And there's a lot more to uncover here than you might think.
It really is fascinating how much depth there is to this.
Yeah, so let's start with just setting the scene.
Right.
Wikipedia tells us that for men, Ihram consists of two white unhemmed sheets.
Yeah.
The rida, which is draped over the torso, and then the izar, which is secured around the waist. So pretty minimalist, right?
Very much so.
But there's a reason for that.
Oh, absolutely. And Islam Q&A really emphasizes this idea of humility before God. By shedding all the outward signs of status and wealth, everyone's standing there as equals in the eyes of the divine.
It's like a visual equalizer, right?
Exactly.
It just strips away all those superficial differences that we, tend to focus on.
Yeah, in the everyday world, absolutely. And Wikipedia adds to that this element of unity.
Right.
Seeing everyone dressed alike really reinforces that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood.
Yeah.
It's a powerful visual.
Totally. And then Muslim Aid brings in this point about the psychological impact.
Yes.
By renouncing vanity and really focusing inward.
Right.
You're minimizing distractions. You're allowing for deeper spiritual reflection.
Yeah, it's like the simplicity of the garments almost becomes this catalyst for internal transformation.
Wow. Okay. So we've got the what and the why of the clothes themselves.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because Muslim Aid points out that Ihram is more than just what you wear. It's a sacred state of being.
It's a transition, a state you enter into through very specific rituals.
Okay.
And it begins with Ghusl.
Ghusl.
Which is the ritual cleansing.
Okay.
So think of it like a full body bath, but with this deeper layer of intention.
Right.
It's purifying yourself, not just physically, but spiritually.
So even just the act of bathing takes on this whole new meaning.
Exactly. And then there are 2 rakas of Salah Ihram.
Okay.
It's a special prayer that's performed specifically with the intention of entering the state of Ihram.
So it's like drawing a line, right?
Yes.
Like, okay, I'm stepping into a different space.
Exactly. And once you're in the state of Ihram, there are certain restrictions that come into play.
Okay, like what?
So you can't shave, you can't wear perfume, you can't hunt, you can't even cut your nails.
Wow. It's like hitting the pause button on all those everyday routines that we just take for granted.
That's a great way to put it. And, those prohibitions might seem kind of arbitrary at first.
Yeah.
But they all point towards this idea of a deliberate detachment from worldly concerns.
I see. So Muslim Aid mentioned minimizing distractions. Does that tie into this?
Oh, absolutely. It's about shifting your focus from the physical to the spiritual.
Right.
And it's a concept you'll find in a lot of different ascetic traditions throughout history, actually.
Wow. It really makes you think about how often we get caught up in the superficial details of life.
Right.
And how something like this really challenges us to, reevaluate our priorities.
To really consider what truly matters.
And speaking of what matters, all of our sources mention intention when it comes to Ihram.
Yes.
Why is that intention so important? What's the significance of consciously, entering this state?
Well, in al-Bukhari, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, one shouldn't pass the miqat unless he or she is in the state of Ihram.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Which is this designated boundary marking the point where you physically and mentally leave the ordinary world and enter the sacred space of pilgrimage.
So crossing that boundary without being in the state of Ihram would be like missing the point entirely.
Exactly. The intention is what separates this journey from just a physical act of travel,
Right.
It transforms it into a spiritual pilgrimage,
Yeah.
a conscious choice to step outside the routines of daily life and dedicate yourself to something bigger than yourself.
It makes me wonder if we can apply this idea of intentionality to other areas of our lives. Have you ever had an experience where just, changing your clothes or your outward appearance shifted your inner state of mind?
That's such a great question, and one I think we'll delve into a little bit further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But for now, let's turn to some of the more practical questions that Muslim Aid addresses.
Sure.
Because I'm sure there are a lot of what-ifs that come up.
Like, can kids be in Ihram?
Absolutely. In cases where a child is too young to understand or to make the intention themselves, their guardian can do it on their behalf.
Oh, that's sweet. What about bathing? Is that allowed while in Ihram?
Yes, it is. But remember, it's about purity, not pampering. No fancy scented soaps or luxurious bath bombs allowed.
Got to keep it simple because ultimately it's about stripping away those distractions.
And focusing on what truly matters.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting point from Muslim Aid, and that's practicality. Even in the midst of these ancient rituals, there's room for common sense. Like if your rida keeps slipping, feel free to use safety pins.
Exactly. It's like this reminder that even in the pursuit of the spiritual, we're still human.
Right. We need those little life hacks sometimes.
We do. And I think that speaks to the beauty of Ihram. It's about finding that balance between the sacred and the human experience. Acknowledging our limitations while still striving for something greater.
This has been a really great start to our deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm already seeing Ihram in a whole new light.
Good.
But there's so much more to explore.
Definitely.
We'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the significance of Ihram and how it relates to us, even if we're not Muslim.
Absolutely looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Ihram. So last time we were talking about how Ihram is about so much more than just the clothes, right?
Absolutely. It really is about embodying a certain state of being.
Right. And that's marked by intention and humility, and like this conscious effort to strip away distractions.
Yeah. And, speaking of minimizing distractions, that really ties into those restrictions that we were talking about.
The restrictions, right?
Yeah. It's fascinating how those prohibitions, no shaving, no perfumes, no hunting, all point towards this idea of detaching from the physical world.
It's like by simplifying your outward appearance and your actions, you're creating space for something deeper.
Exactly, a deeper, more inward focus. And it's not just about abstaining from certain actions, it's about cultivating this heightened awareness of your thoughts and your intentions.
Yeah, Muslim Aid talked about that even just something like bathing, takes on a deeper meaning when it's performed with the intention of purifying yourself for this journey.
Exactly. It's like those mindfulness practices that are becoming more and more popular now.
Oh, yeah.
It's about being present in each moment, even the most mundane tasks.
So it's like those principles are kind of universal in a way.
Very much so. Whether you're a Muslim pilgrim undertaking Hajj or you're just someone seeking to be more mindful in your everyday life,
right?
That underlying intention is very similar.
So we've talked about, entering this state of Ihram. The restrictions involved the deeper meaning behind it all.
Right.
But what happens when it's time to leave that state,
Yeah.
Is there like a specific process for transitioning back to everyday life?
There is, and it's beautifully symbolic, actually. So after the final rites of Hajj are completed, men will shave their heads or trim their hair.
Okay, so it's like physically shedding that pilgrim identity.
Exactly.
A return to those outward markers of regular life.
And for women, it's usually cutting a small lock of hair,
okay,
signifying that transition.
So it makes me think, even though, most of us won't experience something as profound as Hajj, do we have our own ways of marking transitions in our lives?
That's a great question. Think about it after a big project at work, a period of intense personal growth, even ending a relationship. Do you ever feel this urge to do something symbolic?
Oh, yeah.
Like get a haircut, rearrange your furniture, go on a trip.
Totally. Sometimes I feel like I need that outward change to reflect those inner shifts.
And maybe without even consciously realizing it, we're tapping into that same human need for ritual and symbolism.
Yeah, to help us process things.
Exactly. So we've talked about the individual journey, but what about the impact of this practice on the Muslim community as a whole?
Right, like what are the broader societal implications?
Well, one of the most powerful aspects of Ihram is its emphasis on equality.
Okay.
So when everyone is dressed alike, those external markers of wealth status, even cultural differences, they kind of fade into the background.
It's like creating a microcosm of a more just and equitable society.
Exactly. It's a visual reminder that in the eyes of God, everyone is equal.
Regardless of background.
Precisely. And that experience of shared humanity, of unity and interconnectedness, that can have this ripple effect that extends far beyond the pilgrimage itself.
I'm already feeling like I've gained a whole new appreciation for Ihram.
Me too.
But we're not done yet. There's still more to explore.
There is.
So in our final part, we're going to explore some of the more nuanced aspects of this practice.
Okay.
Like how it intersects with themes of gender, social justice, and the challenges of navigating modern life while upholding these timeless traditions.
Sounds good. We'll see you back here soon for part 3.
All right, so welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into Ihram.
I'm excited to get into these final points.
Yeah. So in this part, we're going to go a bit beyond just like the individual experience and kind of look at some of the broader like societal and cultural, conversations that this practice sparks.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how Ihram, while being so rooted in ancient tradition, still raises all these questions about modern issues like gender roles and social justice.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. Where do we see those things like intersecting?
Well, one area that really stands out is the visual aspect that we talked about earlier. Remember men wear those simple two-piece garments,
Mm-hmm.
while women's attire tends to be more varied.
Right, reflecting those regional and cultural influences.
Exactly. And that raises these really interesting questions about, how interpretations of modesty and what's considered appropriate attire for women can vary so widely, even within the same faith.
It's like even within this context of, spiritual unity and this shared purpose, those societal norms and expectations are still there.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think about, how those norms might influence a woman's experience of Hajj.
Right.
Like, does the diversity of women's Ihram clothing represent like a freedom of expression, or does it actually reflect, the pressures to conform to certain cultural standards?
It really highlights that complexity of navigating, those intersections of faith and culture and individual identity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about clothing, right? We
Right.
talked about those restrictions that come with Ihram,
Yes.
no shaving, no cutting nails, and so on.
Yeah.
Do those apply equally to men and women?
In principle, yes. But as with so many aspects of religious practice, there can be nuances in how those restrictions are interpreted and applied.
Can you give me like an example?
Sure. So some scholars will argue that certain restrictions, like the ones related to hair, might be less stringent for women.
Yeah.
And that's often due to like cultural norms or practical considerations.
So even within this system that's designed to promote equality and unity, there are still these like layers of complexity
Right.
that really reflect the diversity of human experience.
Absolutely. And it highlights this ongoing conversation, within the Muslim community
Yeah.
about balancing traditional interpretations of religious texts with the realities of modern life.
And individual circumstances.
Exactly. It's a conversation that we see happening in so many areas of society today, right?
Definitely. Like, how do we reconcile that ancient wisdom with the complexities of the modern world?
Right. It's a reminder that understanding any tradition requires acknowledging those nuances
Yeah.
and engaging in this like open and respectful dialogue.
And speaking of dialogue, I'm curious about how non-Muslims perceive Ihram. Is there a risk of misunderstanding or misinterpretations, especially in a world where information and misinformation can spread so quickly?
There's always a risk of misunderstanding when encountering something unfamiliar.
Yeah.
But that's where education and open-mindedness come in.
Right.
The more we learn about different cultures and practices, the better equipped we are to challenge those stereotypes and to build bridges of understanding.
It's about recognizing that even if we don't share the same beliefs or practices, we can still approach each other's traditions with respect
Yes.
and a willingness to learn.
Absolutely. And I think Ihram, in its simplicity and its focus on these spiritual essentials, really has the potential to offer valuable insights
Anyone.
to people of all faiths, even people who don't identify with any particular religion.
It's like this reminder that regardless of our backgrounds or our beliefs, there's something universally human about wanting to connect with something larger than ourselves, to strip away those distractions and just seek out, deeper meaning and purpose.
Beautifully put. And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree. As we wrap up this deep dive into Ihram, I'm really struck by how much more there is to this practice than you might think at first glance.
Definitely.
It's this journey of spiritual transformation. It's a symbol of equality and unity, and it's a catalyst for these important conversations about faith and culture and, just the challenges of navigating a complex world.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that even in a world that often feels very divided, there's still room for shared humanity and this pursuit of, deeper meaning and connection.
So thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to the Mind Mosaic channel for more thought-provoking content. And as an emerging channel, your support really means the world to us. So we're incredibly grateful for each and every one of you.
Until next time, stay curious.